his way. Devil is on his way. Devil is on his way, motherfucker. The devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Fall to your knees. Devil gonna make you pay. Fall to your knees. Devil is on his way. Motherfucker, he's on his...
Mountain Murders is an Appalachian true crime podcast. Listener discretion is advised. The show contains graphic language and depictions of violence. It may not be suitable for all audiences.
We say fuck a lot. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to Mountain Murders.
I'm Heather.
And I'm Dylan.
How you doing, Big D?
Oh, feeling sexy.
You're feeling sexy?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
I don't know.
Stop.
It's probably a waste. So how are you?
Well, I'm doing just peachy. I've had a great week, and I would like to thank our brand new patron for so generously signing up at patreon.com to support our show, and that is Denise.
Yes, thank you, Denise.
And I have to say, Denise was also our Instagram winner. We had a giveaway of merch on Instagram, and Denise was our winner. She actually lives in Oklahoma.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah. So after becoming, I guess, our winner, now she's a patron.
Wow. So she's lucky, and she's making us lucky.
Well, thanks for that, Denise. Dylan, I have a true crime news story, a case that this kind of thing irritates the shit out of me.
Okay, lay it on me.
Okay. So there was this Alabama couple, and they went on the news pleading for the safe return of their missing infant son. On Wednesday, Caleb Wisnand, he's 32 years old, he was charged with reckless manslaughter for the death of his 5-week-old son, Caleb C.J. Wisnand Jr. Now, hours before his arrest, Wisnand and the boy's mother, a 28-year-old named Angela Gardner, spoke to the media. They had this big press conference pleading for help in finding their son.
You know, this happens so often.
It's like fucking Susan Smith.
It makes me...
That's what it reminds me of.
When I see someone really pleading for their child's return, it's always in the back of my mind, like, is this another one of those cases? Because it's happened over and over in such high-profile cases.
Well, this guy Wisnand told the reporters, and I quote, "It would mean everything to us. The family ain't the same without family, that's for sure. It's been taking a toll on everybody."
Oh, God.
So shortly after this press conference, the infant's body was found buried in a remote wooded area in Lowndes County, Alabama. And the cause of death hasn't been released yet. But authorities announced now that the prosecutors want to upgrade this man's charges to capital murder following the son's autopsy.
So, well, they already are saying that's their intentions to pursue capital murder?
Yes.
After the autopsy results. So they're already seeing signs, some obvious signs, sounds like, that this poor little baby was killed.
It's so sad. And I will never understand these parents who supposedly, oh no, my child's disappeared. And then it turns out they did it.
Yeah, you got to be some kind of monster to be able to get up there in the public and plead for help and have, all these volunteers and searchers and, emergency services people working like with you to look. What
happened was authorities got this 911 call around 10:45 p.m. on Monday, and it was from Wisnand, and he was calling from the Circle K convenience store somewhere along the highway outside of Montgomery. He was, claiming that he had a missing baby. It weighed about 10 pounds and that it was last seen wearing a camouflage onesie. And at the time, there were few details about this disappearance being made public. So then by Wednesday, they have this press conference. Wisnand and Gardner didn't refer to their son by name during the press conference, which is very strange. And then they offered these conflicting accounts of what happened.
Oh, wow. So
sending
they don't...
up red flags for authorities. And Wisnand, the father, the one that's been arrested, he kept stressing that he just couldn't remember many details about the disappearance. Now, I call bullshit. If your child, your infant, goes missing, Like, one, how can an infant go missing? It's not like it just popped in the family van and took off, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's an infant.
It's not a runaway.
It's not even crawling, probably.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, like,
They stay where you put them.
That had to be stolen. How would you not know the details?
Yeah, see,
I'm just real foggy on what happened. I'm like, well, if that's the case, sir, then you're a fucking idiot.
No, there's no way that'd be possible. It would be a flashbulb memory moment in your life to where you remember fine detail, very vivid detail of everything that happened. You're not going to be iffy on when your infant disappears, right?
Now get this bullshit. The dad told authorities, I don't remember a lot, but I did remember I was breaking up, with the cops. If anybody's got anything, any places that I could have gone, you know who you are, come forward. Like, he can't remember where he was?
He's in a catatonic state, some kind of fugue state.
So the mother said she had been home on Monday with her 2-year-old child when Wisnund brought the 5-week-old child to this convenience store. He claims he went to go pay for gas at the gas station and then realized the child was gone. He let the police know, and then I guess he called her and said that the child was missing, and she's begging, like, please, please help us find him. Now, asked about the last time that the whole family had been together, Wisdom said it was Saturday night when we were all together sleeping. And then he went on to say, and I don't remember much.
Okay. Well, I mean, you would have to prove he has a history of these mental lapses maybe, or some point he had a brain injury to cause something like this to really happen, because I just don't buy it.
How do you just can't remember?
If you don't have that history.
Were you high on drugs or something, then at least that would make sense here.
Who doesn't look at the baby constantly? When I have a look, I think everyone, even when you have someone else's baby, you're like, where's the baby? Oh, the baby. I mean, you're looking back at it constantly while you're driving, every moment. I don't know how you don't notice a baby.
Yeah, babies are little time sucks. Like, all of your attention goes to the baby.
Yeah,
I get that.
Everybody look at the baby.
Well, the child's body, CJ's body, was found in Lowndes County, which was about 30 minutes from where he was last seen. And this discovery was made when authorities received some new information when the couple went in front of the cameras. So I'm not sure if someone ratted them out, what happened, but some sort of information, was given to cops.
It sounds like someone knew something, and the fact they had the gall to get up there and act like that must have, they're like, hey, I'm going to tell what I know. Maybe somebody else connected some dots that was familiar with these people.
Now, this information comes via the baby's maternal grandmother. Her name is Margaret Hope, and she said that this young couple had been living with Wisnund's parents and that her daughter was planning to leave him. And she speculates that's the reason that he took the baby, and that he knew he'd killed that baby and had to come up with some sort of excuse.
Oh, my God.
And she goes on to say that Angela's a great mother and she's very overprotective of her kids. She was really happy when she gave birth, and that she just cannot believe that this SOB killed the baby.
Jesus. Yeah, I don't know what you do.
And apparently he has a lengthy criminal history. He was already under indictment in an unrelated case on reckless endangerment, possession of drug paraphernalia, meth, and heroin possession.
Okay. So, what do you think? Abuse, the child accidentally dies? I just have no opinion on any of that because I don't know any details.
He was arrested in June 2020 for driving erratically. At the time that he was pulled over by cops, Angela and the infant, the 2-year-old, I suppose, they were also in the vehicle when he was pulled over. So they say it's too early to tell if drugs had any kind of role in this child's death. It's just, it's so sad. Apparently, the father called 911 4 minutes after the baby was last seen on surveillance footage at the gas station. And the video image is pretty grainy, as we all know those CCTV cameras are.
I don't get it
but
nowadays.
They say it does look to be him, even though it's grainy.
Man, there should be a law passed that every video camera in America needs to be upgraded.
Well, this is the thing. If you can have a Ring camera for your own home security that's filming in 4K essentially.
Yeah.
That's clear as hell.
Very good detail.
Then why the heck do these businesses like Walmart not have clear cameras? I don't
Yeah.
know.
I mean, you have a security system. You think it would have top of the line, and I can get cheap cameras on Amazon right now as a private individual that have a great picture day and night.
Your phone's camera
Has
even
a
clearer
cheap, yeah.
video imaging.
I mean, back in the 70s and 80s, I got it. That's all you had to work with. But I mean, come on, people, get it together.
It's called technology.
Oh, well, that was a lengthy discussion about that, but that's just a horrible case. And yet again, do you think both parents are involved, or you think he's done something?
I think he's probably the catalyst.
Yeah, I think there could possibly, total speculation, but yes, possibly in some kind of drug psychosis or been up for days, who knows what. But whatever the investigators saw when that poor little baby's remains is leading them to go straight for murder, not negligence, not, something like that. So
I just, it really grinds my gears when I hear these stories. These children go, quote unquote, missing, and then the parents are guilty.
Well, when it's little kid,
save your fucking crocodile tears for somebody else. Don't get on camera and play up this, sympathy card, and you've got everyone in the community concerned. Our hearts are going out. Sometimes if the story gets picked up nationally, you've got people from all over worrying about this poor child. Their heart's broken. Please, we got to get this child back home to their parents. And then you find out the parents are responsible.
Well, like in the case of Susan Smith, you had entire communities being harassed by the police and people being, literally thrown up, on the cop cars and searched, and just a whole neighborhoods and areas of people under suspicion. And she's lying the whole time.
Additional charge. They should create some kind of charge or a law that if you are guilty of murder, you're charged with murder, and you go on to any kind of media
and publicly lie,
and publicly make this declaration, and that you should be charged with something else.
No, I totally agree.
Because it's bullshit.
A very serious charge.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's
that case in Tennessee that we discussed earlier. A lot last year, and it still breaks my heart. And that is the Evelyn Boswell case. That beautiful little girl, missing. Mom's a fucking nut. The
family is a nut.
Family hadn't seen this baby for weeks. Whatever. Mom's lying. Baby's here. Baby's there. Baby's whatever. And then they finally, discover the child's remains on her. On the grandfather's property.
Yeah, with all the baby's
mom's
belongings.
Sitting in jail, charged with murder and, awaiting trial.
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of similar to Lori Vallow case. They're we really don't have anything to charge her. If you can't, once the state becomes...
If you cannot produce your children...
Yes.
And they turn up dead...
Yeah, if you can't produce even before they get so far as finding remains or anything, that should be a very serious... violation of the law. I mean, however you want to word it, you should be able to produce your children or proof that your children are alive, be it a Zoom call with some, with the magistrate or anything.
It's like Casey Anthony.
Oh,
Zanny the nanny. Anyway, okay, I know we've rambled. You guys are probably what the hell? Please get to the story. But I just thought this case was something else.
Yes, another one of those.
In a way, it kind of ties in with what we'll be talking about today, Dylan.
Oh, and what's that?
Well, we have a big case. We've been veering away from some of the larger cases, and we often kind of shy away from covering the big cases that, of course, there's always the top 10 everybody covers. And this is a big case, but it is a close by case, not too far away from us, and it's a big case, and there's so much information. Ash thought we have to tackle this case, Dylan.
Yeah, I think it's a case we're both very interested in, and we're interested in all the big cases and stuff. We're students of true crime, if you will.
Of course, but you will not hear us discussing Ted Bundy or Ed Gein or anything like that on the show.
No, Heather prides herself in bringing you a case you've never heard before, which I think she does a very good job at that. But we do like to, from time to time, as our listeners know, do a big one And this is a really
it's
big
been
case.
covered, and there are documentaries, and there's other podcasts dedicated to the story. But we're going to give you the Mountain Murder spin.
And this is going to be on the Atlanta child murders.
Actually, a 2-part series.
Wayne Williams.
Maybe.
Maybe.
We'll be bringing you some information that might make you question what you thought you knew about the case.
Well, that's one reason I think we should do this case, because some pretty serious things have washed out or come out, recently. So, and I think some of it's rather compelling, I must say.
All right. Well, let's get into it, Dylan.
Okay, let's do it.
From July of 1979 to May of 1981, the city of Atlanta was terrorized by a relentless, sadistic serial killer who preyed mostly on young black men and boys. Camille Bell, mother of victim Yusef Bell, told Newsweek, "There are actually people who can walk into your neighborhood in broad daylight, steal your children, murder them, and throw them back in your face."
Yeah. This group of mothers and parents of these children, it's just, I feel so horrible for them the entire time.
I just can't imagine as a parent suffering the way these people have.
No, and especially when you reach out for help and stuff, and it's just not there.
And this scale of murdered children, of missing children, I mean, it's just unimaginable to think that this happened.
Yeah, in an American city, in anywhere in the world, this is so horrible. And it's you got to protect. A society's got to protect their children and their elderly. You hear that, and that's how you can really judge a society, and I agree with that. And protecting the children should be like number one for everyone.
Yes.
Yes.
They're our best resource.
Well, it's our future, and they're vulnerable.
Atlanta was a symbol of the Old South. So after General Sherman's burning of the city, it was rebuilt with segregationist attitudes. In 1958, there was a famous firebombing at a Jewish synagogue. Things began to change a bit when Delta Airlines and Coca-Cola turned the sleepy city into a bustling metropolitan area. In the 1970s, the white flight began when white people migrated to the suburbs, leaving the city almost overwhelmingly black, like overnight.
Oh.
It was a really fast migration out of the city.
Yeah, and I think that happened a lot of places, but it sounds like here it was kind of happening very quickly.
Well, what's kind of interesting about Atlanta as far as, like a bigger city goes, is that up until the 70s, it had been like a fairly, kind of 50-50 as far as the population went. I mean, you had a lot of white families living there. You had a lot of black families living in the city. And it wasn't, even though there were these segregationist attitudes, but you still had like a lot of white communities, a lot of black communities in the city.
Right.
And then in the 70s, you had Delta, Coca-Cola come in, bringing all these jobs, a lot of high-paying jobs. So people fled. They went out to the suburbs. They built big houses. They bought, houses with a yard, all that.
Well, yeah, I guess when people want to tend to stick together in a way in our society, which I think that's just natural and not a bad thing in some ways. But it's interesting when you see this type of social upheaval in an area happen very fast.
Like in many big cities, crime and unemployment were commonplace. America was seeing a rise in single mother households, and they grew more so in the black community during this time. So by the mid-1970s, Atlanta saw the rise of a black mayor and then a predominantly black city council. Even the police department was comprised of mainly black police officers. In 1979, Atlanta's MARTA launched its early stages of a rapid transit system, which meant navigating the city could be done with ease.
Well, yeah, I think that you always need those systems.
And affordability.
Yeah, those systems in place for a city to really grow and kind of... Atlanta's an interesting city because it's real spread out.
It is a sprawling city.
You do have like a downtown area, but it's not all that big.
Really. You might get welcome to Atlanta or you're in Atlanta sign, and then it's like 45 minutes later you hit downtown. I mean, it's like you're driving what seems like for 20 miles before you actually get into like the heart of the city.
Yeah, and I think it's a little different in the South to find them, because I can imagine that's what L.A. and places like that are like.
Yeah, L.A. is
sprawling,
like huge. I mean, it could take you 2 or 3 hours to get from like one spot, like one neighborhood to another in L.A. because it's just huge.
Well, yeah, it's weird because you have the downtown, the historic downtown, and then you have a whole nother, I guess I don't know, is that the business downtown or whatever, where there's all those buildings and stuff in like North Atlanta or something like that?
Yeah, and then you have all these like different areas. You've got like 5 Points, Buckhead. So you've got all these like little kind of communities, like kind of sprawling out from like the city's center.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
It's a fun town. We like Atlanta. It was in July of 1979, on July 21st to be exact, that 14-year-old Edward Hope Smith left his home on Cape Street to meet up with friends at a skating rink. After spending the evening with his girlfriend, Edward departed the rink around midnight, and he was never seen again. Edward loved sports and was considered quite athletic, even well-built for his age. The boy grew up in poverty, living in East Lake Meadows housing projects with a single mom. He had not really known his father, and Edward was, to say this, loosely supervised.
Okay, so he kind of did what he wanted.
He had a lot of freedom for a young boy. Edward was a boy who would do odd jobs and try to earn money any way he could. He was a street-smart kid, the kind of kid that you had to earn his trust. He was very cautious about people. He would size you up. His friends and family agreed that he was the kind of dude who would have not willingly gotten into a car with a stranger.
I say that's what I wonder the whole time looking at this case is how, because it would happen in broad daylight, these kids would go missing or not, in the evening when everyone's out and about. It wasn't like they were all middle of the night or in the morning or something. So I always wondered how this person or persons did this so quickly and quietly. Did they gain their trust somehow and get them in the vehicle at least? Or was it like forced abductions? I've always wondered how that went down.
Well, on this particular day, Edward had earned a little extra money and he was feeling really happy about that. So he offered to take his girlfriend on a skate date. So here he is. He's feeling good. He's got a little money in his pocket, He's flexing a little bit, flossing for the ladies.
Yeah, he's had a good day.
Takes his girl to the skating rink, and I'm just imagining a skating rink in Atlanta, 1979. That was a good time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Right? The roller boogie. Everybody's like having a good time, doing a little jam skating.
Well, it was at the height of that skate culture, right?
Yeah, I totally was born way too late because I should have been there I should have been there. I love how you're just looking at me like, okay.
Well, and I know that you mean it. I know it's coming from your heart.
I should have been the roller disco
She
queen.
loves it. She loves it, guys and girls.
Okay. So a few days later, Alfred Evans, who was a friend of Edward's, he went to a movie theater in downtown Atlanta, but he never made it to the movie. When he didn't return home on the night of July 25th, his mother was not that concerned, because her son was a hard worker who often did odd jobs to earn money, like Edward. And he often would stay out late. If he had a little money in his pocket, he would stay out late, sometimes would stay out all night. And it was summer after all. And as we know, especially back in the day when parents felt, I guess, a little bit more like things were safer then, kids would stay over at each other's houses, have sleepovers, kind of impromptu, campouts, that kind of thing. So his mom just wasn't too concerned. But also Edward had ran away before, and he did sometimes hang out with a rougher crowd who were known to experiment with drugs and commit petty crimes. But when his mother reported him missing, the case was not prioritized at all. She was told that her son would likely pop up in a couple of days and not to worry.
Oh, he's a runaway. Or he's doing something.
Well,
he'll be back.
That's the thing. Anytime police in these situations, it seems, if a child maybe has had some trouble in the past, they automatically, it's a runaway situation.
Well, I mean, how many times have we heard that?
Oh, so many times. And
And
that was
then
just so prevalent during this decade. I mean, in the 70s and 80s, it was like every kid was a runaway.
Well, and like I've said before, I think you should err on the side of caution and treat it as a possible something real until it's disproven. Until it's proven that it's just a runaway kid or a troubled kid acting out. Yeah, it's not that hard, right, to follow up.
It was on July 28th of 1979 that the bodies of Alfred and Edward were discovered together in a small wooded area near Niskey Lake Road. Edward had been shot with a .22 caliber gun in the back, while Alfred had been strangled. Now, investigators gathered that the boys had not disappeared on the same nights, and they weren't even sure at the time if the boys knew each other, but they did. Now, soon after, Atlanta police got a tip that these murders were drug-related. This caller, this tipster, said that the boys were known to hang around a certain house, smoking marijuana, and that they had been seen like days before they both went missing, like partaking, in a little weed at this house.
Oh, I can imagine how that affected the investigation to their deaths.
Well, the boys' family said that they weren't involved in drugs, but police considered it a viable lead. And this was a high-crime area, and unfortunately, these sorts of things happened. Like, it was not uncommon to find a dead body, and oftentimes drug-related in this neighborhood, although it was alarming for people because they were so young.
Well, yeah, and then there's not one, but there's two victims in the same area, right? Found near each other. I assume they're near each other.
Yeah, same area.
Yeah.
Well, the cases were soon pushed aside as other murders, other crimes, came in. Now, the next child to disappear was 14-year-old Milton Harvey. Milton was running an errand for his mother. He had gone to the bank for her on September 4th of 1979. He never returned from his errand. His mother reported him missing right away, but police treated it as another routine runaway. There was no follow-up on this missing persons report, but when his badly decomposed body turned up in a wooded area in November of 1979, it became clear that a pattern was emerging. However, it seemed to be ignored by Atlanta police.
Well, I mean, we watched some interviews with some of the cops, employed at that time, and it seems as soon as they tried to run it up the chain of command, they would get shut down. Well, I mean, when you threatened,
like, do you want to keep your job?
Yeah, do you want to keep your job? Do you want to be transferred?
Do you want to be put in a basement doing paperwork and that kind of thing?
And that I don't get. I mean, I guess no department wants to have a serial killer or someone like that operating in their area.
It reminds me of The Wire.
Yeah, I mean, because I guess
we saw a lot of that type of thing happen on The Wire. If you're not familiar with HBO's The Wire, okay, it's like my all-time favorite TV show, but it's amazing and you should watch it.
Yeah, it is, and I think they did that because that exists in these large police departments. This attitude of we don't really need all this mess. We don't want this big case.
I mean, agreed, because you're going to have to devote the time and energy and a lot of resources, financial resources.
Well, see, a lot of people miss that on these, especially these large departments. It is always about the money and how much you can spend and the resources. And they have huge hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm used to, in our area, everything's on a small scale. $5 million's a lot, but these departments $500 million to operate all year or more. And so, yeah, it's always about the money and moving these resources around. And yes, you're going to have overtime, task force, all these extra men and resources being used. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal. But still, you gotta follow the police work, in my opinion, right?
Well, what are we here for?
If the police work saying this is patterns, this is tied together, then that's the way you got to follow the case.
Well, my thing is, if you're in law enforcement and you're not willing to put in the work and do the job, then like what purpose are you serving?
Right.
Because you should be in it for the right reasons.
Yeah, and it should only be politicized to a degree and not to the point where it's actually affecting whether or not you do good police work.
Like negatively impacting an entire city. Well, a month after Milton went missing, 9-year-old Yusef Bell was playing in the streets when an elderly neighbor lady asked him if he would run to the corner store and purchase some snuff.
Yeah, see, I mean, these, I'm sure some people could listen to these kids and about these parents and be like, oh, well, you got to watch your kids. But we got to remember, it's a different time.
This was in the 70s.
And the kids can run down to the store and get cigarettes and snuff and stuff for people, and they would sell it to them, and they would take it back to whoever they're buying it for.
We grew up in the 80s, and I think we still had a lot of freedom. I mean, the attitude that, like, you went outside and played, and you came back at dark, or you came back when it was supper time. And you might check in periodically throughout the day, but our parents weren't watching us like hawks. They weren't helicopter parents like we have today.
No, and I remember seeing kids buying cigarettes and stuff, and their like parent or grandpa or whatever be like right there at the door in the car, and the store clerk knows them, and they give it to them, and they would take it out there and give it. I mean, I've actually seen that done. But this doesn't make them bad parents, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, not at all, because this was really common at the time.
Right. And kids were allowed a lot more freedoms.
And they were trusted more. And honestly, let's face it, kids were so much more mature back in the day.
Sure they were. They had to be.
They grew up, they grew up a little faster. And not to say that like in a negative way, but they did. They were more mature and could kind of navigate the world a little bit better. I mean, all this helicopter parenting, and I get it because I've been that parent at times, but we're not really doing these kids any favors because we're not preparing them for like life out in the world.
No, I've been that parent at times too, but my kids are at the ages where they started going through adult things and, their adult lives. And I've also, figured out that it's most of the time it's best to let them figure it out for themselves. Now, if they're in dire straits and need some help, obviously you jump in there, but the best thing to do is just let them figure it out because that's what makes them stronger adult, makes them yeah.
Well, on the evening of October 21st, Barefoot Yusef agrees to go make this purchase because the lady told him he could keep whatever change was left over. And I mean, come on, what kid doesn't want a little extra pocket money, right? And it was probably enough to maybe buy some penny candy or like a soda.
Yeah, 50, 60, 75 cents back then is, you could go have a good time with that.
That's a score. So eagerly, Yusef trotted off to make this 2-block trip. Now, witnesses at the market saw Yusef in the store buying the snuff and some candy. However, like the others, Yusef vanished off the Atlanta streets.
So he made it to the store. They saw him in there like normal. It's probably not the first time they've seen him in there. He's probably around all the time. And he leaves the store to go home.
Just 2 blocks from home.
Never seen again.
Seen again.
That's what blows my mind about this case. I mean, if you think that someone would see something, it's the middle of the day, and even if you don't know that kid, you notice a kid walking along, and if someone was to pull up and jump out and grab this kid and throw him in the car, I just don't know how that would go unseen, right?
Right.
So it makes me wonder, does this person gain their confidence somehow, get them to willingly get into his vehicle?
Well, the one thing that differentiated Bell's case from the others before was his mother, Camille. She was not about to let her son's disappearance be written off by police. Camille is a tenacious woman, and honestly, she's like a hero mom.
Yeah, definitely. She does so much, gets so much accomplished in this case over the years that follow after her son. Yeah, she's a hero.
She really is.
Very strong person, stronger than I am.
I mean, I'm like in awe of her.
Yes.
And the work that she did and her tenacity. I mean, this woman, she's amazing. Well, her boy was a good kid, and she knew he would never run away. He was not a problem child. I mean, he was like a really good, sweet, loving kid. So she was like, I know in my gut that something awful has happened to my child.
Yeah, and I'm sure she has. If you know your kid and you have other people speculating what your kid's like, but you know in your heart, like I'm sure some of these other mothers knew too. Their sons may have done these, had a few little problems here and there, but you know the character of your child, right?
Well, it was a month later that Yusef's body was found in an abandoned school building. The 9-year-old had been strangled. So Camille, hero mom, was putting more pressure on the Atlanta Police Department. Word began to spread through Atlanta that a child serial killer was on the prowl. The media had not picked up the story, and law enforcement was unenthusiastic about making any statements or even acknowledging a connection between the abductions and murders.
Now, is this a third victim?
This would be the fourth victim.
Fourth victim.
Because we've got Edward and Alfred, then we have Milton Harvey, and then Yusuf is the fourth victim.
Okay, so yeah. I mean, that's obvious. It seems like it'd be easy to even think there's a pattern here, right?
And so Camille, I mean, making a fuss, making a stink about it, I mean, she kind of gets the ball rolling in her own way. Because she's talking, you know, you can't keep her quiet. Like, she's a mad mom, and she has every right to be. And she's making a fuss. And so people start to talk. And, you know, people are whispering, gossiping. This rumor starts circulating. So people are like starting to pay attention. Now, much like today, the abductions and murders of Black children, along with adult victims, are so underreported by the media. I mean, this still happens.
It does. It's happened very recently, and I say it probably happens all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it's disgusting.
It is disgusting because that's a human. That's another human being.
Yeah.
And
these are children.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's what sickens me about this whole situation is up until this point, the minuscule, if any, attention being paid to these boys. They're children.
Well, that's one time I'll never forget. Ron Paul, which, you know, not to be political, but he was asked in some kind of hearing if an immigrant's child was brought to the steps of the emergency room, what should you do? You know, turn them away or, you know, help them? And he just looks at him incredulously and is like, it's a child. Like, you know, what kind of question even is that? That's a child. If we have the technology or ability to help that child at that moment, how could you not? Right?
It just seems like it would be common sense.
I mean, it's just human decency, right?
Yeah. Well, as more people were talking about this potential serial killer, the murderer must have begun feeling a little bit of stress because there was a cooling off period of about 4 months. And we all know, most of us probably, if you're a true crime aficionado, with many serial killers, a cooling off period is common.
Yes, it is common.
Now, it doesn't have anything to do with remorse or guilt because these people are like fucking psychopaths. But usually it comes when the fear of getting caught arises. Yeah,
or they have this kind of pattern to what they do and their urges build up and they have the, you know, and then when they can't stand it anymore or whatever, they need that release, you know, they'll strike again.
Now, some of them might have some kind of distraction. Like maybe they get a girlfriend for a short period or they get a new job or, you know, something that kind of will help with that cooling off. But then eventually they're going to be right back at it. So, and that's exactly what it is, though. It's just a cooling off period. It is temporary. So sooner or later, those urges are going to resurface. And it is believed that the next victim was 12-year-old Angel Lanier. Now, Angel's case is still considered controversial by some because she was a female. Now, the victims to date had all been Black boys. March 4th of 1980, Angel went to run some errands for her family, and she'd finished up her homework, and at some point stopped off at a friend's house to watch Sanford & Son, which, by the way, fucking love Sanford & Son.
Yeah, I don't blame her for catching the new Sanford & Son.
Because I totally grew up watching that show, and it's hilarious.
Yeah, it's the best.
I like to grab my chest and be like, Elizabeth, it's the big one, I'm coming home. Well, she was never seen again. So goes to the friend's house, watching TV, leaves, you know, heading home, never seen again. Her mother, Venus, reported her missing right away. Angel was reaching puberty, and Venus had been seeing the way grown men were ogling her daughter. Plus, their home was near Fort McPherson, where there were a lot of men. So she was really worried that something had happened.
That's so disgusting a mother had to feel like that about their daughter, but I mean, I think we've all seen it. You're out in public, you're either your or some friends, you know, 12, 13, 14-year-old daughter.
I've seen it with our daughters.
Yes.
And there have been times when it is all I can do not to just claw somebody's eyes out. And there have been times when I've actually said, like, can we help you with something?
Yeah, I mean, come on. Are you disgusting or what? This is obviously a kid.
Yeah.
Right? It's not that mistaken age bullshit. This is a kid.
Yeah, she has braces.
Yeah, so what? If she, let her wear her clothes, and can you not do that? Because you're disgusting.
Can't a young girl look good, feel good about herself, wear a pretty dress, look cute, go out in public without having some dirty old man, grossly leering at her?
Yeah, it's disgusting, and so stop it.
Yeah, it's nasty. And I know we have a lot of female listeners out there and a lot of parents, and I'm sure you guys feel the same way. Well, when her body was found in a wooded lot on Campbellton Road, she was 3 blocks from her family's apartment. So again, this is another case where just blocks from a child's home.
Yeah, they're taken in close proximity to their homes. I mean, you're talking a couple of blocks in some instances, and then found not that, right there near their home.
Well, the quote I opened with, Camille Bell, saying that these people are, snatching up kids, murdering them, and then shoving it back in our faces. I mean, this is exactly what she's talking about.
Well, I mean, in this instance, in these circumstances, the killer has to be comfortable with the neighborhood that he's operating in. There's no way he can't be to do this thing in the same area like this.
Angel was found wearing the clothing she left home in, but a pair of unknown white panties were stuffed in her mouth. And I hate that word, but I used it anyway. So an electrical cord had bound her hands together, and she had died from strangulation. Angel was possibly sexually assaulted, but I found conflicting reports about this. Now, according to the medical examiner, her hymen was broken and there was some minor abrasions to her genital area, but this didn't necessarily mean that she had been raped.
Right.
I mean, this could have been like she had been riding a bike or, those kinds of things can happen. Now, 1 week after Angel went missing, 10-year-old Jeffrey Mathis disappeared from his Atlanta neighborhood. He was sent to the convenience store to purchase some cigarettes for his mother. But like the previous children, Jeffrey was never seen again. The store was only a few blocks away from his home, much like Yusef Bell.
Well, yeah, and that makes me think that someone's stalking this child or watching, or just, as it could be a crime of opportunity, but they obviously watch him go to the store, watch him come out. I mean, it's very scary when you think about it.
When he was gone for over an hour, his mother, Willie Mae Mathis, became concerned. She sent Jeffrey's brothers to look for him. Now, later that night, a patrolman told her to file a missing persons report if he didn't return by morning.
It's just a kid.
Sometime later, a friend reported seeing Jeffrey getting into the backseat of a blue car, possibly a Buick. And about 13 days after Jeffrey went missing, Willie Turner, a guy, recognized Jeffrey's picture in this newspaper article and saw, was like, I recognize this boy. And I saw him getting into a blue Chevy Nova driven by a white man.
So he knew the kid. So when he sees him do this, he's going to remember, because he knows it's not some random kid, right?
Turner also told police that the same white man had pulled a gun on him before taking off in his car. So 2 people came forward with information about a blue car, but police did nothing with this information. The report was filed and forgotten. Jeffrey's brothers also later said that they had seen a blue car in the driveway of a house where Jeffrey was sometimes known to hang out.
Interesting.
Now, shortly after his disappearance, 2 boys who attended the same school as Jeffrey reported to the principal that while they were out in the schoolyard, 2 men in a blue car had attempted to lure them away. The boys memorized the license plate, and it was turned over to police. However, there was little investigation into this matter.
Well, I mean, you got this blue car keeps popping up, and you don't even act like the information might be relevant. It's like I don't know. It's very strange.
Well, remember the blue car, because we're going to hear about this blue car again. It was a year later that Jeffrey's badly decomposed body would be discovered in a wooded area.
A full year after he disappeared.
A full year later.
Okay.
It was at this point the media could no longer ignore the secrets being whispered around Atlanta. The cases slowly began attracting attention, and eventually These would be dubbed the Atlanta child murders.
Yeah, well, see, all this time the public could have had information about safety and being on the lookout. And I mean, that's a long time for these obvious, likely connected cases to be happening before it goes public. Don't you think so?
Yeah.
I mean, there's all this time's passed when people could have changed their, what they did and what they thought and keep their eyes peeled, and you could have caught this person.
Well, there are
some of these kids could be alive.
Many things that could have been put into place or could have helped with this situation. Well, by this time, law enforcement officials believed there were one or more serial killers operating in Atlanta. However, catching the perpetrators would not be an easy task because DNA profiling was not yet available. Most businesses didn't have any kind of security cameras or videos, and the victims mostly came from neighborhoods where residents often felt uncomfortable cooperating with police.
Well, and yeah, I could see those roadblocks happening in a situation like that.
It reminds me of the Atlanta butcher case where there was a serial killer preying on black women in Atlanta. And oftentimes people in the neighborhoods, like witnesses, they didn't want to come forward. Like they didn't want to talk to police because of the racial tension.
Oh, wasn't that where he would just attack them in alleys and on the street?
Very similar to this.
Oh
in
my
their
God.
own neighborhoods,
Yeah.
blocks from their home.
And people scared to come forward because they don't see it. And that's not healthy for a community. That's not healthy for the cops or the community that they're policing in to have that disconnect like that.
And that is why, like, quote unquote, community policing is so important. That you have the same cops working the same beats, that they get to know the people in the community, that they become like a friendly face.
That you try to hire people from the community, if at all possible, to fill these positions. Because in places like LA and stuff like that, all the cops are from like outside the area. And they come in and it's just, you want to have that community connection, that sense of connection to the people that you're working with and around, the citizens.
That's what makes policing successful in many of these bigger cities.
Right.
Now, on May 18th of 1980, 14-year-old Eric Middlebrook was last seen answering the telephone at his home. He then left the house on his bicycle and he had some tools with him. But I couldn't find a lot of information. It doesn't seem like his parents really knew like what he was up to. But again, 1980, he's 14, takes off on his bicycle. It's like not a big deal. Probably does this all the time.
Well, yeah. I mean, he's going to do something or do something with some buddies, or it sounds like. And again, it wasn't helicopter parents. They didn't want to know or feel the need to know every single thing their kid does every single minute of the day.
And from what I understand, Eric was also a child who would often help around the neighborhood, do little odd jobs for people to make extra money.
See, now I've wondered about that because that's a pattern that is a lot of these kids that end up being victims do this, a little side hustle. They carry groceries, sell, hand out brochures or whatever. And that makes me wonder if that's the killer's in to gaining their confidence.
Well, in some way, Dylan, because I look at it like most of these kids had a common trait, which was poverty. And the willingness to earn a little extra money to make some cash, have a little extra money, maybe to help with the family or just to have some money for their own spending money because mom and dad couldn't afford to just hand them money to go to the pool or go skating. That's how the killer maybe earned trust with these kids. Preyed on the poverty.
Which seems to be prevalent because it's not like you got these, all of a sudden have these groups of, you make a good point, of entrepreneurial kids. They're doing this
it's out of necessity.
Out of necessity, just to have some pocket money or maybe even buy dinner.
Right. It's not like, sure, maybe some of these kids did just have that entrepreneurial spirit. I can't say that word. But it's mostly out of poverty. Because,
right.
It's the summertime and you want to go to the swimming pool, but your mom can't afford to give you $1.
Or the arcade.
Because $1's gonna buy milk and a loaf of bread.
Right.
So, and I get it because I'm like, I grew up poor and so did you.
Hey, I had to cut grass and make my own little side money if I wanted, a certain pair of shoes or something. because my mom was doing the best she could, but it wasn't going to be something extravagant.
Yeah, I mean, when my parents divorced, it was, money was tight. So it wasn't like, hey, every weekend I can hand you $10, $20, $30 to go skating, go to the movies, go to the swimming pool. I mean, it was a treat to be able to do those things.
Yeah, and these children seem to maybe be in even more impoverished,
like more dire
situations than
yeah.
what we grew up in. So yeah, I totally understand, but that definitely there's that pattern. And that definitely could be a way that the killer gains their confidence. Hey, I got this project I want you to help me with.
Absolutely right, Dylan.
A promise of $15 or $20 back then at that amount of money to these kids.
Even $5.
Yeah, even $5 whole dollars at once is like a big deal.
That'd be like high rolling, $5.
Yeah.
1980. Well, according to reports, Middlebrook had testified against 3 juveniles in a robbery case just a few weeks before he went missing.
Really?
Yeah. Now, a day later, his body was found next to his bicycle in a rear garage of the Hope You Like It bar, which was located at 247 Flat Shoals Road, next to the former Mark Inn. Now, his pockets were turned inside out.
So somebody was going through his pockets.
His chest and arms had stab wounds, but his manner of death was due to blunt force trauma to the head.
Okay, that's pretty interesting.
Well, it's a little different.
A little different MO.
Because historically, documentaries and information that you get, especially when they focus on, Wayne Williams as the perpetrator of these crimes, strangulation.
Yes.
Seems to come up a lot. But many of these victims were not strangled, and they were killed in other ways.
Well, what do you think about that?
Well, I mean, obviously we're going to have a second part, and we'll probably expound more upon some of our theories then.
Okay.
But I just think it really brings into question, like, if a killer has a certain MO, then these other random murders, shooting, stabbing, female, there are a couple female victims peppered in there.
Yeah, well, I mean,
it just seems odd that you would have these different different causes of death.
And that's not
and have one killer.
It's not like that's never happened. MO changes, even on purpose, maybe, by the killer. Or they're trying to figure themselves out, what they really like, what turns them on, or why they're killing, because there's all these different reasons as why the killer kills. And so it's not unheard of, but it is strange, because they typically get a certain process they like and stick with it. And so that's very odd for it to happen more over and over like that, I think.
Right, and some of these bodies are found like in wooden areas, and they're more hidden or secluded. And then he's found in a garage at a popular bar.
Right.
Where it's very likely, he was found a day after he went missing.
And he was found after he had testified against some other people. So, you got to...
there's that aspect.
You have to consider that. Yeah, that's very, very strange. It's interesting to go through this murder by murder. It's very sad, but at the same time to see, because you don't notice these things unless you do go through it like that.
Well, Dylan, in my research, it seems that a lot of the documentaries and books, they'll just kind of touch upon like the victim's name. This is when they were found. But even though I know it's probably going to, I guess, prolong the episode a bit, and we're going to have to do the 2-parter, I just feel it's important to honor each victim. Like, their story deserves to be told, and they deserve to have more than like a tiny blip in our story.
Right.
Because,
I agree with that.
Because these are children. This is someone's child.
Yeah, and it's it does a disservice to all of it if you just kind of gloss over that part.
Well, I know,
because they're the main reason. That's what matters most in the story.
Well, it does.
Is their stories.
Is the victims. And so I wanted to try to find as much information on each individual victim as possible. And of course, some of them, it's just a bare bones bit of info out there. But what I could find, I wanted to include it, because these were real children.
Yeah, it's
just
horrible.
Yeah, it's really upsetting. Well, it was June 9th when Christopher Richardson, a 12-year-old, was last seen outside the Crystal Hamburgers near Belvedere Plaza Shopping Center. Can we just talk about Crystal Burgers for a second?
I like Crystal Burgers.
Do you?
Do you?
No, they're disgusting.
I thought that was White Castle.
Yeah, they're all kind of gross.
You don't like Crystal either?
No, but I know we don't have a Crystal locally, and I know people who will drive to Tennessee, like 2 hours away, just to buy Crystal Burgers, and they'll come back with like a bag of like 24 of the little
Yeah,
burgers.
like a sack of them.
Yeah.
Eat them for 2 days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have like known friends and people in my life who will do that over a damn Crystal Burger.
They're not playing over their little sliders, bro.
And you like them?
Well, yeah, I like them better than I did that White Castle. No offense to anybody in White Castle country. We might have went to the wrong White Castle, but it was freaking disgusting.
Well, the White Castle, where was that? Reading, Ohio?
Yes.
It was nasty.
Yeah, anyway.
Yeah, I immediately regretted my decision to even eat that burger.
No offense to Reading, Ohio. It was a very beautiful little area.
Now, Christopher was last seen walking towards the DeKalb Midway Recreation Center in Midway Park, where he was planning to go for a swim. Christopher lived with his grandparents at 1495 Conway Road, and he was wearing blue shorts, a light blue shirt, blue tennis shoes. Now, at the time that he went missing, his mother couldn't be located. Like, she was out doing whatever she was doing. His biological father was named Thomas, and he was at the time serving 15 years in prison at Reedsville for armed robbery. Christopher's stepfather was also serving a year in prison at the time he went missing.
Dadgum.
Christopher's body would later be found along with another victim, Earl Terrell, in a wooded area off Red Wine Road by a neighborhood resident's dog. Though his body would not be discovered until the following January of 1981. Now, near the victims' bodies were shotgun shells, a Penthouse magazine, cigarette butts, and a magnetic recording tape.
Okay, that's a weird assortment of items.
Richardson had been clothed with unfamiliar swim trunks. So not the same shorts he left the house wearing.
And ones that can't be identified by his family.
No.
Never seen them before.
Never seen them before. So upon first examination, the medical examiner didn't think that this was Christopher Richardson because they were trying to match teeth with dental records. But eventually, I guess they came to realize that this was in fact Richardson. And the cause of death couldn't be determined for him.
Well, that's very strange.
He was so badly decomposed at that point.
And now it's one thing that hasn't come up in these, it doesn't seem, is sexual assault on the victims.
No?
They just seem to be killed.
Yes. Now, in the case of Angel, our first female victim,
Right. Well, there was that
there
one.
was speculation of possible sexual assault. But yeah, these male victims, so far, no reports of sexual assault.
But it is odd for him to have clothes on that he didn't leave the house and that's never been seen. So at some point he had his clothes off, right? I think you can draw that conclusion.
Strange.
And I personally don't know that I think Angel fits into the rest of these victims. And that's nothing against Angel. Someone obviously...
Well, and
she came across the path of a monster.
And it is controversial. A lot of people don't want to group her in with the Atlanta child murders as we think.
Well, that just seems, not just slightly different. That's the opposite of victim in a way. So I just don't think, and the way she was bound and things like that, I think that's something someone keeps doing, right, as part of their process. But she definitely came across the path of a monster. There's no doubt about that. And sadly, there are always monsters out there preying on kids.
Now, our next victim also is, I guess, a little unusual when we look at the grand scheme of, what we would say encompasses the Atlanta child murders. And that is LaTanya Wilson. So it was shortly after... on June 22nd, that 7-year-old LaTanya Wilson vanished from her parents. I don't know where I got grandparents from her parents' apartment, which was the Hillcrest Heights building in Dixie Hills. hills. I'm so country. Now, according to a witness named Gladys Durden, the girl was taken by two men. One was seen climbing into the window of the apartment 4 different times.
Well, that's wild.
He would have had to climb over her brother's bed and go past her parents' room to abduct this child.
Who has the guts for that?
The man then left out the back door, leaving it ajar. He was seen holding the girl, like in his arms, down in the parking lot as he was speaking to another black man.
It's very, very weird.
LaTanya was said to be wearing a white slip and white underwear. Now, her body was found on October 18th in a fenced-in lot on Verbena Street. And from what I gather, is not that far from her home. I mean, I'm not super familiar with Atlanta, but just from when I was kind of researching, it doesn't seem like it was very far away. So it seemed like it was kind of in the same vicinity or neighborhood. By then, her remains were skeletonized. Medical examiners couldn't establish a cause of death. There was a man named Nathaniel Cater who had lived upstairs in the apartment building, and he was suspected to be one of the men in the parking lot. A witness named Amp Wiley, who lived next door, had seen an older model van with 2 males and a female hanging around near the back of the Wilson apartment. Wiley reported hearing a commotion in the Wilson apartment through the kitchen wall, like someone was getting a whipping. And he heard Ella Wilson, LaTanya's mother, screaming, "Stop." About an hour and a half later, when he left his apartment again, he saw Ella sitting outside the apartment, seemingly upset about something. He called out to her, but she ignored him.
Wow, this is very odd. There's just all there. This has nothing to do with Wayne Williams. Not anything anywhere near. It doesn't even sound like.
Stop bringing up his name because we haven't gotten to him yet. So stop, Dylan. It's like a big spoiler alert.
Oh well, no. I think people knew it was Atlanta child murders. I'm sorry if I did ruin that for someone. But no, this is very weird.
So he calls out to her. She just ignores him. There was a maintenance man that had replaced the glass in the window of the apartment a few days before the little girl's disappearance. And he was later tied to and confessed to a different murder, like another murder altogether.
What the hell?
So I assume that he was like on the suspect list. That's why he was mentioned, because he'd replaced this window and then he's tied to another murder.
Well, yeah, I think that would definitely land him on the suspect list for me.
Now, her case is strange because she's kidnapped from her home. Someone goes through the window, but I'm confused about this other neighbor hearing like a commotion in the apartment.
Yeah, that doesn't add up. I mean, on the one hand, it sounds like they snuck past the family, which people do have the balls for that. Like
Polly Klaas was abducted from a bedroom, like a sleepover or something.
Yeah, like out the window kind of thing, right?
So it happens.
Yeah, but then the neighbor's describing sounds like a commotion, some kind of, the mother's aware of something happening. But then, he sees her later and she kind of just brushes him off. She's not saying, call the police, somebody took my daughter.
And again, 2 men in a van.
Yes, so and a woman.
Yeah, so this is just a very peculiar case. And I tried to find more information out about LaTanya's disappearance, but there's just not a lot of detail out there. So her case is mysterious.
It's very.
By now, the ongoing horror story was changing life forever in Atlanta. Local television anchor Monica Pearson would begin her nightly broadcast for Channel 2 with, "It's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?"
So that's where that saying basically came from?
Yes.
Really?
Many residents began patrolling neighborhoods, forming citizen watch type of groups, and some took to carrying baseball bats around the streets.
Well, you can't blame them. The children are disappearing left and right. And it seems like the law enforcement's kind of slow to react, even though now I think they can't ignore it any longer.
These people are feeling like if you're not going to protect us, we will protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people would feel that way.
I think we all would feel that way.
I'd be carrying around a baseball bat like wishing a motherfucker would.
Well, this is my neighborhood, you
yeah,
know.
like who the hell are you supposed to be?
These are
coming up in
my
here?
friends
These are
and
our
family.
Children.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, residents began feeling unsafe. Many were installing like new locks on the doors or taking precautions. Children were told not to play outside, or if they were playing that they had to stick in a group. Parents stopped sending their kids around the corner to the store, like, you know, letting the kids be anywhere where they might get snatched up.
Well, yeah, and this, I'm sure this is part of this is a reaction the cops did not want the public to panic in a way, but it's inevitable as these children keep going missing and no one feels safe. So I think you got to get out ahead of that thing. And, you know, just, you know, maybe information may have stopped some of these victims from being killed.
Much to their chagrin, older siblings were tasked with, like, you better not let your little brother, little sister out of your sight.
It's going to mess up my groove, Mom.
Atlanta was a city on edge. It was a powder keg, like ready to explode.
Yeah, because this
Tensions are high. People feel unsafe. They're worried. They're concerned.
And this was not that many years after Martin Luther King's murder in Memphis, right?
Yeah.
And so there's still those kind of social tensions amongst groups of people. So, and trust to authority.
There's still racism. There's still talk of the Klan being around on the edges.
Yeah, so all this, I could imagine living in this environment. You throw in the middle of all those tensions, someone's killing, a monster's killing kids right out from under people's noses, basically.
And it seems like no one cares. And that's the part that's so fucking disturbing, is that it seems like the police don't care, the media doesn't really care, and these people feel helpless.
And you can't blame them. I think anyone put in their position would feel similar.
The next day, which was June 23rd, 10-year-old Aaron Wyke disappeared around 6 p.m. after having been seen at a local store called Tanner's Corner Grocery. A female witness saw Wyke being led from Tanner's by a black male who was around 6 feet tall and weighed about 180 pounds or so. The man had a goatee and a mustache. The boy was placed into a blue Chevrolet, which matched the description of the car described in the Jeffrey Mathis disappearance. The following day, Aaron's body was found under a bridge going over train tracks on Constitution Road near Moreland Avenue. He was wearing a red and black striped shirt. He had blue cutoff pants and high-top sneakers. The medical examiners ruled his official cause of death as asphyxiation from a broken neck, likely from a fall, like from the bridge.
Oh, wow.
Now, Aaron lived with his mother, Linda, in Thomasville Heights housing. In an adjacent... I just can't get it out today,
it's
guys.
Adjacent.
In an adjacent apartment to another victim that we'll get to named Patrick Rogers. So many of these victims are from the same area, neighborhood, they're friends, they live in the same apartment buildings.
Yeah, that's, I don't know what to make of that.
Are these connections with these victims?
Yeah, it makes me wonder if the killer wasn't purely a crime of opportunity, his victim, but was actually stalking and watching his victims before he struck.
Initially, Atlanta police ruled Aaron's death an accident. They claimed the child fell from a railway trestle. However, his mother told authorities that her son was afraid of heights and he would have never climbed up that trestle in the first place.
Well, again...
She's like, I know my son. He would not go up there. He was afraid of heights. No way.
Well, you got to give some weight to what the parents know about their kids, right?
And she told police that the only way her son would have gone up there, like, on his own, would have been if he was frightened and he was trying to get away from someone.
So either scenario it's out of his care, is not good. If he's been chased up there and then fell, obviously that's bad. Or forced to go up there for some reason and thrown off the bridge. Either way, that's not a good scenario.
But again, it's definitely like it seems like a different kind of MO.
Yeah, it's not. It doesn't really fall in line with all these other cases that are very similar.
So again, it's just kind of like an odd. It's like just mysterious, right? On July 6th of 1980, 9-year-old Anthony Carter was reported missing. The next day, July 7th, his body was found in a warehouse. Anthony died of multiple stab wounds. Now, due to this, investigators thought his death was unrelated to the other murders. So they weren't trying to, group it in.
Well, it seems to fluctuate between, there was one gunshot victim, I think. But it's between knives, stabbed, and strangulation. And the strangulation seems to be the most common method of death.
Well, his death is, I guess we're going to kind of group it in or something. It's more closely related with the young man who took off on his bike, and then he was found in that area kind of behind the bar.
Right.
That little parking garage.
With his pants pockets turned out. And...
Yeah, because he had some stab wounds, but he died of blunt force trauma. But similar as, far as stab wounds and left in this kid's in a warehouse, they're kind of left in places that are more public or where their body is more likely to be found soon.
Instead of hidden.
And they're both found pretty quickly after they go missing.
Yeah, that's true.
He attended E.R. Carter Elementary School, and he lived in an apartment on West End Avenue with his mother, Vera. Like other victims, Anthony was a kid who liked earning pocket money, often volunteering to do odd jobs for people.
Once again, a good way to leave yourself vulnerable to strangers, making contact with strangers. Yes, and they're just doing it for, a good reason, but it's a very dangerous thing for these kids to be doing.
On the day he had gone missing, Anthony was outside playing hide-and-go-seek with a cousin at 979 Cunningham Place. Now, investigators believed Anthony had been murdered elsewhere, then transported to this warehouse on Glen Street where his body was dumped, and workers found the body. 10-year-old Earl Terrell was last seen leaving a public swimming pool at South Bend Park in southeast Atlanta on July 31st. Earl had reportedly been kicked out of the pool by a lifeguard named Olivia Hickson. Witnesses reported seeing the boy looking for a friend at a house. He was buying freeze pops at a little corner grocery store 1 block from his home, and then others saw him crying on a corner near Jonesboro, which I'm assuming is a street. Now, on the day he went missing, a middle-aged white man with a southern drawl reportedly called the family home to say he had Earl in Alabama and asked for a $200 ransom to be paid by Friday.
What the hell?
However, no other call came in after that.
No follow-up with the directions where to meet me or anything?
Nothing.
Now, I wonder if that was a hoax.
Now, 6 months later, which would be January of 1981, Earl's body would be found next to Christopher Richardson. Earl attended Lakewood Elementary School, and he lived with his mother, Beverly Belt, and a stepfather named James, and they lived at 1930 Browns Mill Road, which was in the southeast, area.
So, that's happened more than once. You have multiple victims found in the exact same area. So, and I guess the killer thinks, hey, I've already put one body there. It's not been found yet. I'll put another body there. So there's no way in my mind that those victims found together are not connected, right? That's the same killer dumping his victims in the same exact space. So that's a very strange too.
And again, he and Richardson were found in this wooded area on, I guess it's called Red Wine, and it was a neighbor's dog, like a neighborhood dog. A person was out with their dog, and the dogs, started barking. They were like smelling something kind of foul and found these 2 boys. And they were located with the shotgun shells. There was like the porno magazine.
Yeah.
Cigarette butts. Just some random stuff here. Which kind of makes me think, well, maybe it's an area where
people go hang out.
Hang out, party. Maybe kids go back there, drink, smoke pot, whatever. Or it could be an area where kind of like, hobos live or camp out or something like that.
Which would explain all this other debris that's right around them.
Because it didn't seem from reports like they felt the debris or the items found had anything to do with the murders.
Yeah, and I think I agree with that. I mean, it sounds like kind of a vacant lot area, even if it is woodsy, just where people hang out, maybe, get drunk or kind of a lover's lane, impromptu lover's lane type spot.
It kind of, just in research, it kind of made me feel like that was likely what this area was, used for. All right. Well, that is where we're going to leave you on this 2-part series on Atlanta's child murders.
Yeah, that's left my head swimming going through all those victims, but I think it's interesting. I've never looked that deep into each individual victim. They just kind of get clumped in there, and I think that's very interesting. And it's really sad as well because so many of these kids are just within reach of their home. They're right there at home, just around the corner.
We have so much to get into, so I hope you will tune into part 2. I mean, we have more victims to discuss, but we also have the investigation to talk about. We have this group of mothers who come together and form almost like their own task force. This is where, if you watch the Netflix show Mindhunter, this is where the behavioral unit comes in. And this is kind of one of the first big cases where they're using the profiling.
Actively using it to try to solve the crime.
To come up with, who this serial killer might be, this profile of him. I mean, so there's and then of course we are going to talk about the suspect and who ends up taking the rap for all of this.
Yeah, and I think that's why this is such a kind of important big story, is you have all this historic stuff happening while the investigation's actively going on.
Well, it's a really exciting story when we get into talking about the FBI and the investigation and how they caught who they felt was the perpetrator, and then of course the new information that surfaced as of late. It's going to be really exciting. So I hope that you will tune in for part 2. We have so much more ground to cover, and I hope you guys enjoyed this episode so far.